it's very important for that CEO to be out there, to be trusted, to be seen as a leader in the industry, to be seen as understanding the problems of his or her prospective customers. I had the brain of a CEO, the ability to look and sort of articulate vision, look at the big picture, look at patterns, and build things and design things from there.
You need to figure out where your team's superpowers are, where their strengths are. Align that to the talk tracks your customers and your prospects want to hear.
At the end of the day, you have to create an organization where people are told and encouraged to pursue passions outside of work.
What are your thoughts on the sort of podcasting landscape generally from a business and a PR perspective?
You got to be really good at targeting. You got to be really good at picking where you go as a company, as a CEO, as a PR firm with clients, who you're targeting.
And what about businesses having their own podcast?
When businesses create content and everybody...
Are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dickson, alongside Daniel Bussius.
Welcome to the Built by Love podcast, where we explore how entrepreneurs build businesses, lives, and legacies that inspire love. Today's episode is all about public relations, storytelling, and building authentic connections. Our guest is none other than Jackson Wightman, the founder of Proper Propaganda, a trailblazing PR agency that's been redefining how brands communicate in today's fast-paced world. He's also the author of Tech PR Playbook. Jackson is a master storyteller and strategist who helps businesses not only stand out, but connect deeply with their audiences. With a reputation for crafting campaigns that move the needle and win hearts, Jackson brings decades of experience to the mic today. We'll dive into the art and science of PR, how to craft a narrative that resonates, and even touch on the balance of running a successful business while staying grounded in what matters most. So grab your notebook, settle in, and get ready for a conversation packed with wisdom, wit, and actionable insights. Jackson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Great to have you, Jackson. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, so Peter and I have kind of started something that we start with the first question of a little bit out of the playbook of what's the scariest moment professionally in your career where there was something at stake and you weren't quite sure if you were going to, make it out of it, right? So if you could walk us back into that time and place, what was going wrong, what was your feelings, and what ultimately what happened?
It's a great starting point, and I think it's an interesting starting point maybe for people to get to know me and my entrepreneurial journey, because I think my scariest moment is a common story. Probably you've heard it from some of the folks you work with. I got fired. I had a great corporate job. It was actually for a company based in Los Angeles. I was doing great, and one day I got fired. And I got fired because truly I am not a great employee. And I needed to get fired. I needed the kick in the pants of getting fired to start my own business, to take the entrepreneurial plunge. I think I had thought about it. It was on my mind, starting my own thing, hanging my own shingle, but I didn't necessarily have the balls to do it. And getting fired was both the scariest thing and the best thing that ever happened to me.
Where were you working at the time?
Company
you don't have to mention names if you don't want to.
I'm happy to mention names. I have a company called CauseForce, a company that I learned a lot at. I was there for 3 or 4 years, and I think I was good at my craft. I had a good relationship with the CEO for a time, but I just, as an employee, I think being an entrepreneur or being an employee is an orientation, and both are perfectly fine. Some people are entrepreneurs. Some people are more suited to being employees. I am a person who is an entrepreneur, and I sort of denied my nature for a long time. And finally, the moment came, because I was a shitty employee, that they gave me the kick in the pants, and I had to go and do what I probably should have done a couple of years before, or at least 18 months before the firing.
Amazing. So when you were in that role, because we've talked before, and obviously we've had opportunities to work together before, you were doing nonprofit PR and for hospitals and for events and things like that. When did you get started in PR? Did you come out of college and you had a media and communications background and you jumped right in? I mean, what's that kind of look like? And where I'm going with that is, why'd you choose that path? I mean, it's an interesting path. I think PR is very important, but what drove you to that and how'd you get there?
I My background academically is in political science. So I did a master's in political science years ago in Ottawa, Canada, which is the capital of Canada, which is where the government is, and got a job working for a prime minister of Canada in issue management. And I didn't know, I wasn't particularly partisan. I wasn't, on one team and screw the other guys kind of guy. But I knew it would be an interesting opportunity, particularly so young in my career. And the exposure in politics, obviously, you have so much exposure to media, and you learn a lot about how media works. You learn a lot about some of the rough edges of media and how influence works. And it was a really interesting pressure cooker from which to kind of build a career. So I got the chance to work in a couple of election war rooms. As I say, served on the issue management team of a prime minister, and from there took off in communications. So it, I don't know that I was intentional about it. It sort of chose me. I have talents that fit the profession. I think I've always been interested in writing and words and things like that. I had some baseline, but an opportunity came up, and that opportunity was just a wonderful finishing school, if you will, professional finishing school to starting this career. And it's been so much fun. It is a very, like marketing, and you guys would know this, it's very dynamic. It's very fast moving for a person who gets bored easily as I do. It's ever changing. There's new technologies, new inputs, and that's what's been thrilling.
So how would you define PR? Or another way of asking the question, like, what the fuck is PR?
I love it. It's a fucking shit show. It's a very interesting profession. I would define it as follows. I would define it as the relationship an organization or person, if a person is an organization, and a person can be a brand, obviously, but the relationship an organization has with the public is the way I would define it. And PR activities are those activities designed to influence the public and shape the public's opinion of a specific organization or entity person.
Right. And how do you do that?
You do it.
That's a great question.
This is what's really interesting about it, I think, and you guys would have certainly heard of this, and I know that many of your listeners will have heard of this as well. But the ways you do it, and the sort of buffet of tactics and ways you can go about this, are so broad at this point and so dynamic. And so what falls under the rubric of PR, I would certainly say media relations does things that one might define classically as kind of publicity. So we're going to put, company X in the New York Times, and that hopefully is going to reach people and influence them and give them a good opinion of us. That's the kind of classic sort of publicity PR. But there's a range of other things. I think one of the things that's really important these days is CEO reputation. So a lot of the work we've started, I'm sure some of the work you've done, involves building the profile of a specific CEO. Maybe that's getting her a speaking gig at a conference. Maybe that's getting her to publish on LinkedIn more frequently. Other things are available too. Of course, social media tools are part of the PR toolkit. That's been, around since probably the mid 2000s, but I think they're as important now as they've been before. So there's a really wide breadth of kind of tactics that fall under it. But for me, it's anything that touches the public that is unpaid. I don't consider advertising or, performance marketing necessarily a part of PR.
Right. It's so interesting because, in my agency, we bump into clients that are scaling. They're well past $1 million. Some of our clients are up at $40 million in revenue, and they've got budgets now, right? They've got products that work. They've got teams. They got machines and engines that are running. And so they start dabbling into or asking about PR, like, hey, we should hire PR. And our agency doesn't do that. And I'm not an expert in it. So my question is this is what is there, like in your firm, for example, do you do media relations? Do you do publicity? Do you do like all the other things? And sorry, because I'm not an expert here. I'm asking probably a silly question or a basic question in layman's terms, but do you have agencies that do all these things, or are there specialists? Like, and I'll give an example. Like in marketing, you've got marketing agencies, and some agencies are really, really good. They're email marketing agencies or performance marketing agencies. They're driving on ads and revenue and conversion. And others are full service shops. They write copy, websites, video production, the whole nine yards. So I'm handing over to your question there of what's what.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can speak for our firm. We do really four things. We do brand narrative, which is a fancy way of saying the words around a brand, the storytelling piece of a brand, not the visual language. Second thing is I would call it classic PR. Classic PR for me is media relations. So it's heavy on the publicity side. We do what we call performance PR, which is another fancy way of saying affiliate marketing, basically. So connecting with big publishers to put a client in that best gifts for techie dad at Christmas, and there's an affiliate link in the piece and somebody buys, and it's kind of a bit like performance marketing in some ways. And then for us, the fourth area is influencer relations, and influencer relations for us is, work with your friendly neighborhood Instagrammer or YouTuber. Often that is paid work, but it is paid for content. A lot of PR firms are doing a wider breadth of things. And I have nothing against generalists. I know, and I've worked with, I'm sure you have as well, good generalist agencies. And indeed, there are certain types of clients that I think should look at and probably do merit a generalist. And that's who they should partner with and work with. My view, and I have a hammer and everything looks like a nail, admittedly, is that specialization is good. Specialization for me really revolves around two pillars. One pillar is niche. So if you come to me with, I don't know, a kid's toy, we're probably not going to take that on. We are a tech agency and we know a lot about that. And that's where we put our focus. Niche is an important area of specialization. I think the other one, and I'm leery of PR firms that offer 20 or 30 different services. It's hard to be good at 20 or 30 different things. We have four things. We're really good at two of them. We're pretty good at the other two as well. And sometimes we can be quite complimentary with those other two. But I'm just of the mind that a gazillion things that you're good at probably means you're not actually good at them all. So for me, specialist agencies have a place as well. I know some generalists are good, but I tend towards seeing the benefits of specialization, at least.
I mean, rightly or wrongly, Jackson, I think certainly in my mind anyway, PR has a not a bad reputation, but it's like if a firm has a bad reputation or they're fucked up or whatever, they go to a PR agency so that they can like spin the story and basically change the narrative. So what's your take? What's your take? Say again, Daniel.
Crisis PR.
Yeah. So positive. So, but Jackson, the question is, what's your take on helping companies who've done wrong? Like, I don't know, are they trying to pretend that they haven't, or trying to convince people that they haven't? I don't know. Whatever question you wanted to infer from my kind of bit of verbal diarrhea, then go with it.
Honestly, Peter, this is excellent diarrhea. High quality, high consistency diarrhea. I think it's an excellent question. Crisis work is absolutely part of classic PR work. It falls under the scope and rubric of classic PR, and it's an important thing. And not everybody who needs the help of a crisis PR firm happens to be in the army of Satan. There are certainly instances where I know of a firm here that was representing the government of Zimbabwe when Mugabe was running the place. Now, I'm dating myself with that, but that's an assignment I think a lot of people would be leery about taking on. Of course, people are people and they make the economic choices they make, and this firm was getting paid a pile of cash to represent Bob Mugabe and try to scrub up his image. Is it a mandate I would have taken? Absolutely not. But I think crisis PR is important. We work with a number of clients from other non-North American, non-Anglo cultures. So I'm thinking particularly about Asia. Sometimes our Asian clients get into trouble and they have absolutely no malice.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
No subterfuge that's precipitated that trouble. They just get into trouble because culturally and business culturally, things are done a little different there. You know, when a North American company makes a mistake, everybody says, "Oh, that's my mistake. I own it. You know, we're going to do this, this, and this to fix it." There's a very scripted and a very known playbook for fixing these things and for owning a problem. In Asia, people are often a little more quiet about, hey, that is our problem. There's a face-saving culture. There's different things at play. And so sometimes these firms get into trouble. And it's not because they're nasty or nefarious or any of these things.
There's this melding or in some situations I've been in where you're working with large clients, they've got an ad agency, they've got, an internal marketing agency, they're bringing an external marketing agency, and then they've got a PR firm, right? And all three of those, I'm not saying all three of those entities, or actually four, the internal marketing team as well. So those four separate entities, are all doing the same thing in crafting the brand narrative, right? I'm not saying all four do a good job, but where do you sit with who should be doing that? Because there's a unique difference between this is the ideation around an ad campaign or a whole marketing campaign that has a myriad of channels and placements, right? And then you've got the Marcom where it's like, okay, here's the communications. This is how we're going to write with the tonality and the emails and the other things. But where should it really reside? Because it kind of a lot of times in companies, especially under 20 million, no one's really clear about who should be doing what. And from your side, what's your experience and what's your take on it?
My take is that, and I think this is where you're going with at least part of your question, my take is that it is often a shit show for the reasons you've just alluded to, that there are simply too many cooks in the kitchen. And so I am not sure that the PR department is the best cook, or the Marcoms guys, or the folks who are on maybe the more creative side of the business. I think that there can be good cooks from many different disciplines, and indeed a good cook can lead it from any of those disciplines. I think the trouble is when there are too many cooks and nobody knows, hey, this is the lead dog. The thing too, in our experience with brand narrative, I'm sure this mirrors your own, often what you see is people from different backgrounds tend to have different built-in biases. So I could tell you as a PR person who's done a lot of work on brand narrative, my bias tends to be, given my age and some of my career history, engineering something that's a little bit geared towards media. I can't get away from that element of my DNA. So much of my career has been spent dealing with and thinking about media. Does that mean that I'm not qualified to do brand narrative? Absolutely, it doesn't. But I think a company, and indeed a founder or a team that hires an agency, should understand, hey, these guys are coming from creative. This is their bias. These guys are coming from PR and we're getting them to do the narrative. This is their bias. It's maybe going to be a bit more media oriented. Other people are going to have other biases. So I think when you are hiring an agency or any external work to work on brand narrative, understand the background of the team that you're hiring and the lead dog on that team, because it may influence due to built-in biases of people coming from different areas of marketing, how your narrative turns out.
What are some of the other mistakes that you see companies making when they're hiring a PR agency for the first time?
There's a lot, and I think there's a lot primarily because of the PR industrial complex, of which I am a proud member. But the biggest mistake is people don't understand what this thing is for. So PR, and if you take anything away from this dialogue, let it be this. PR is the servant of brand. It is not a direct sales channel. It should not be measured the way you measure your performance marketing. It can impact your performance marketing, and indeed, bigger brands have better return on ad spend and a range of things. But it is a servant of brand. And I think a lot of the time when it goes awry, people forget that when they decide to engage in the process. So start from the perspective of we should be looking at brand metrics to assess whether this channel is working or not. The other thing that happens sometimes, and I think this happens across marketing, and I think it isn't specific to PR, but one of the things that occurs is a company hires an agency for its outside perspective. And then when the agency gives its outside perspective, they're told, hey, fuck you. We don't want to hear that. It's this. It's not that. You guys are idiots. So if you are going to do this, understand what it's for, and what it's for is brand, and understand that the value of outsiders is that they may not tell you exactly what you want to hear. When those things are in place, even if a product is maybe not that sexy, or a company's kind of boring, or a CEO is kind of a nerd who you wouldn't put in front of a camera, it can still go really well.
I'm not sure, just something you said there, I'm not sure I've heard of the term brand metrics before. What do you mean by that?
For sure. Brand metrics for me are things like share of voice. Share of voice is a very important metric in PR, and share of voice is basically how much of the total conversation about a category you own, particularly compared to other competitors. The other thing that we look at in terms of brand metrics and PR metrics is sentiment analysis. So it's great if company Jackson has 100 media mentions and company Daniel only has 5 and company Peter only has 1. Jackson's kicking ass. He's winning the share of voice battle. But if everybody's saying
is a part of shit. Yeah, it's like
right, Jackson's a fucking moron. Jackson's a moron. So it turns out that the share of voice battle didn't matter because Jackson's the king of the shit pile.
Yeah.
So I think that's another important brand metric. And then a couple more that we tend to look for is kind of key message pass-throughs. So how often in coverage or if it's an influencer campaign or whatever, how often are the key messages showing up in the content? Because obviously that's what you want. You want to be putting forth that, we are the champions of youth sports or whatever the hell it is, not we are the champions of geriatrics.
And presumably this is measured from what other people are saying. So is it getting out there into the conversation?
Absolutely. It's measured in terms of what other people are saying. Yeah. So not in terms of media that you are creating on your own media properties or rented media properties, earned media coverage, things in the social sphere and all that.
Well, I've learned.
You mentioned about.
I've learned something on this. I've learned something on this call, as I do every call. But I love it. I love learning new shit.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy I could help.
You mentioned about the CEOs, right? And before the podcast recording, we were just casually talking, and you kind of were bringing that up as well. With the age of social media and influencer marketing and all those things, and obviously with the big billion-dollar brands where you do have celebrity CEOs, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and so forth, they're all over the media. You've got fans and followers. How important is that for a tech company or just actually any company that's going to engage in PR, that whether it's founder led or there's a hired gun in there like a CEO or whatever, that they've got their own brand at play as well as the corporate brand?
It is, in my view, and again, I have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. It is, in my view, incredibly important. And it's incredibly important for a few reasons. Number one, people buy from people. That's a cliche, I understand, but it's the truth. It's particularly important in kind of boring B2B businesses. So think of some abstruse B2B software maker that, manages your accounting or something like that. That's never going to be in the New York Times. TechCrunch isn't going to write a review of this amazing piece of software. It's very important for that CEO to be out there, to be trusted, to be seen as a leader in the industry, to be seen as understanding the problems of his or her prospective customers. The other thing, and there's reams and reams of data on this, CEOs who are known, who have a good reputation, affect stock price, affect willingness to buy, affect sales percentage conversion, a range of things. So CEO profile is very, very important, I think. And again, I'm coming from this where we work with a lot of foreign companies seeking to enter the US market. Some parts of the US and some elements of the US market in certain categories tend to be a bit leery of buying from foreign entities. And they have good reason for that. It's not because they're kooky xenophobes or anything. Maybe some are. But CEO reputation and CEO notoriety and CEO profile has an immense effect on lessening that, on lessening the, hey, I'm buying from a foreigner and I don't really know if they know me kind of thing. So the CEO is very important. I think there are CEOs who are not so comfortable being out front, and that's okay. If that's founders in this audience, it's okay. You have other bench players that you can deploy onto the field. Steve Jobs had Johnny Ive. Johnny Ive was a wonderful foil for Steve Jobs. Very different guy, very different personality, very niche expertise. So you probably have that on your team. You can put those players onto the field and you can build their profile. There's immense value in that, especially if you're maybe a bit more introverted or maybe a little bit less comfortable being out there on a place like LinkedIn sharing thoughts.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I agree with you. But I've seen in the business, one company in particular in the digital marketing space that as they rapidly expanded a few years ago and became a behemoth, right? Had it was the world's largest digital marketing conference, and they made everybody in their team a celebrity in their space. They were out there on social media, told like, I'm the ads expert and I'm the this expert and that expert. And every single one of them, when they got to a certain level, left and then went off and did their own thing.
Yeah.
And I believe, not from them telling me this, but I believe that had some serious damage to the organization where they were left in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
And it started to crumble from within. I'm not saying that's going to happen to anybody else. And here's where I'm going to pose my question to you is, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an owner, and you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to have Johnny or Jane in my organization get out there in social media. That's not me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take stages. I don't want to do podcasts or whatever. How do you navigate that thin line, that blurred line of, I don't want you to get too much of an ego here, and then all of a sudden you start coming back to me asking for more money, or all of a sudden you're getting attention where I don't want you to have attention. So how do you navigate that?
It's a difficult thing, and I think indeed it is. Sometimes profile can precipitate new offers and the propensity to depart. So it is not a smooth, not fraught with peril road. You can lose people. You can also have, as you just alluded to, reactions from a certain type of person who's like, hey, I'm the fucking man now, get out of my face. It's not without peril. But I think it is there are often useful bench players. Some of those bench players speak and can speak very credibly to specific customer problems that maybe a CEO can't, particularly if the CEO is coming, say, from a non-technical background and you're making a piece of software for, real nerd niche market. You're going to need somebody who can speak nerd to those people. A CEO like me or you who's coming from a marketing background is not going to be able to do that. Having that person and deploying them to me in that type of scenario that I just outlined is important, and it's worth the risk that, this person might one day hit the road and say bye-bye, or say, hey, it's time to pay me double the money because I'm I'm the king of the nerds now and I can speak to them and you can't. So it's not fraught with peril, but I think it is still a useful thing to do.
You're an entrepreneur and you're busy, but we know that every business owner needs a podcast without the hassle of learning about production. Well, we figured it out for you. Activate Your Podcast is a service that offers everything you need to make a podcast that creates meaningful relationships with your clients at scale. The experts at AYP will work directly with you to produce 5 pillar episodes from a 2-hour conversation that captures the trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client. And the assets are all yours to create your own amazing marketing campaign. For the benefits of a podcast without the hard work, head to activateyourpodcast.com and let's create something great together. Now, back to the episode.
And indeed, there are, I think of a lot of brands that have done this. Peloton made its instructors famous. Various NFL teams deploy their players out into the community for various reasons, because this is something that can work. It gives another face, another angle, another perspective on the organization that a CEO, particularly of a particular personality, may not be able to. So we are advocates of it, but as you alluded to, it's not without peril.
What I'm seeing as you're saying this is, and I'm thinking about in my own organization. I mean, I'm a generalist, I'm no longer in the day-to-day, so I'm not the expert to tell you how to build the HubSpot or whatever CRM and all that stuff. I mean, I know it, right? But I'm not in there doing any of that stuff anymore, right? So there's areas of things that I can talk to, and there's areas of things that my team can talk to. So here's what I'm going to say to you and kind of get your professional opinion is what I'm hearing from you is as a business owner, you need to figure out like where your team's superpowers are, where their strengths are, and then align that to the talk tracks that your customers and your prospects want to hear, and then assign those talk tracks or those activities to those team members. So if you have, like your example, a nerdy guy that can really geek out on the code level, get him speaking at those conferences where your potential customers, developers are showing up. So they're going back saying, hey, I love XYZ company. So is that a strategy that should be implemented that you think would work well?
I think it's very useful. And it's a strategy that we've seen work for a number of our clients. I'll use a real life example. I'll mention a real life client if it's okay. We work with a company out of San Francisco called BackerKit. And BackerKit has 2 businesses. It has a fulfillment business, a software product that helps people who have crowdfunded, rewards-based crowdfunding products, fulfill their campaigns. Mm-hmm. Then they have another product that is actually a crowdfunding platform. On that crowdfunding platform, BackerKit has a lot of board games. Board games, I didn't know this because I don't really play board games. Board games is a crazy niche industry. People who are into board games are super into board games, and they know if you're not into board games. So when I try to talk to these people, or when certain members of maybe the BackerKit team try to talk to this incredibly important constituency, the constituency's like, fuck you. We know you're not from the tribe. We could smell you 6 miles away. So BackerKit has developed and deployed people on their staff who know about board games to go to these conferences, to speak, to write things on the company blog, LinkedIn, etc. And they've done it to great effect. They've been able to gain a lot of board game market share in the crowdfunding world from bigger players, behemoth players, Kickstarter notably. So it is a strategy that works. And I think you outlined it probably, Dan, even more eloquently for sure than I did in the way you just kind of framed it. It's a great strategy for thought leadership and for humanizing a company with people who can speak to specific ICPs and problems.
It's a great example.
We dove right into asking you 1,000 questions about PR, publicity, all that kind of stuff. I want to take a step back for a second, and then I want to go in another direction afterwards to start getting into things that you've seen that have worked and all that kind of stuff. But what was it like? So you said, okay, one of the worst days of my life, I'm doing PR. I get fired. Something that like was a blessing because I should have started my own agency years before, but I was just comfortable. So I know what it's like. I started my agency in 1998, and I kid you not, the first decade was absolutely horrible.
Mm.
I was broke. I had to take other jobs. I had to do all kinds of things. I stopped answering my phone unless you left a voicemail, because it was credit card collectors calling me mostly, because I was trying to like get this thing up and running. And at least for me, I literally remember on Excel sheets creating applications for employment, right? Like I had to do everything. Everything had to be created, and it was me doing that. Um, was that like you when you started your company? Did you come with an arsenal of already tools and formulas and either documents or playbooks or whatever that you could hit the ground running, or did you really have to start from scratch? I mean, what was that like? Especially PR, right? It's not like you're like, hey, I'm gonna buy some inventory and then put it out there in the world and sell it.
Right. It's a great question. My experience was that I knew the craft, and I think this is a lot of founders. So my story is not uncommon. I knew the craft. Have I gotten better at the craft in the 12 years since Proper Propaganda has been open? Absolutely, of course. Has my team gotten better? Absolutely, of course. So I knew the craft, but I did not have a damn clue how to run the agency. And I think that's something a lot of people and a lot of founders who have gone from, doing the doing to running the business struggle with. And our business took off really in 2016. We just got lucky and we got this niche and we sort of could do it pretty well. And things went very well from there. But the process of learning how to do the business, and I have an MBA and I have a CEO mind, I'm not a doer, but the process of learning how to run an agency by the numbers, what to look at, what to spend my time on is ongoing still. I've gotten a lot better in the last 2 or 3 years than I did in the previous 9 at those elements. But I started with craft, but not a clue. And I've had to learn how to run the business piece and, as I say, how to allocate my time and what to look at and what to care about, really.
I mean, it's the fundamental premise of Michael E. Gerber's The E-Myth, isn't it? The entrepreneurial myth. That
Yeah.
the vast majority of entrepreneurs, in inverted commas, are not entrepreneurs at all. They're people who are very good at craft, or technicians, as Michael E. Gerber calls them, that need to grow into people that have a CEO mind. It's a really interesting phrase you use there, the CEO mind. Would you say that you went into business, your day one of proper propaganda, you had a CEO mind, or do you think that's something that's evolved over time? And how would you kind of package it, that concept?
It's a mix of both, which is an annoying answer, but I'll try and unpack it. I have a brain that likes the big picture. I like to look at patterns. I like to discern how the macro environment is affecting a micro thing. I'm not a builder or a tinkerer or a doer so much, though I can write. So I had the brain of a CEO, I think, and I think a CEO has the ability to look and sort of articulate vision, look at the big picture, look at patterns, and build things and design things from there. But when I started, it was just about how are we going to get enough money in. I got fired from a job I got fired from a 6-figure job. It was a good job. I was doing well. I was younger, making money, living in Montreal, which is not a very expensive city in some ways compared to places like San Francisco or New York. So I was sailing well, and I absolutely I still had that CEO brain then, but I had to move a little into doer and more practical stuff because it was this oh shit moment of holy fuck, how are we going to pay for the rent next month? Which is something Dan alluded to, and I think that's the experience of a lot of people who make the transition from good player on a team, good player in terms of craft, to okay, I'm going to go and start this business. They go through that as well. We had months, I remember in the first year, because I didn't know really about what I should be doing for biz dev particularly. I thought, oh, I'll do good work and people will see and I'll get referrals. Well, that was a bloody disaster of a strategy, of course. You need to be doing things for biz dev. And I didn't have a freaking clue how to do this. So there were months yeah, 1 month I think where the revenue was $2,000 or $2,400, and that was it. Um, Months that we were just wondering like what the hell is going to happen here? How come nobody's calling? What's going on? And had to learn all that stuff, and had to be scrappy and take probably some clients that we wouldn't normally have taken. Had to go through those things, learning about what a shitty client looks like, what is a fit for us, what is even a fit for our work style. So there was a lot of self-discovery, I think, is where I'm going with this, Peter. Forgive the rambling answer.
No, it's fine. That's ultimately what it's about, though, isn't it? I've always thought of business entrepreneurship as the ultimate playground for personal development.
It is. It truly is. And I'm a deeply impatient person. It's not a virtue I acquired. That have had to tame that too, because as you guys know, building a business, and Dan said it well, this takes time. Even okay, we're gonna have that big growth moment. Oh my God, we raised the $10 million A round. Great. Things still take time. Even if you get those hypoglycemic bounces, even if you have those victories where you're like, holy shit, we are rolling here, baby. It takes time. And I think the thing we've learned as well is, and I'm sure many of you listeners are experiencing this, sometimes spiky growth is really, really hard and can be counterproductive. So we've had growth spikes that were pretty intense, and we struggled to keep up with them. And in our businesses, you both know, reputation matters a lot. The word on the street about your agency matters a lot. And we've had instances and times in the business where growth took off really quick. We said, you know what, fuck it, we're going to do this. We're not turning down work. That was always my mantra. And you pay the cost for it. You pay the cost for it in terms of reputation, in terms of your sanity, in terms of your life and your health and your relationships outside of work and all that.
As a service-based business, I mean, I'm a service-based business owner. Most of our clients, most of our listeners are service-based business owners. It's usually harder to track employee performance other than, is Johnny online at 9 a.m. Or is Jane in the office at 9 a.m.? What time? How long are they taking lunches or things like that? I mean, that's kind of like the old school way of things, right? Yeah. The service-based business, it's not like, okay, did you fix the widget, or did you build the widget? Did it go into the packaging, right? It's more of like a customized approach. In our agency, it's like, did you come up with the concept? Did you ideate? Did you do this? Did we get through round one of the copy? All that kind of stuff. And I won't drone on about it. It's really, really hard to measure. So it's also very difficult to measure expectations from the client side, right? So we could be saying like, are we doing the things we said we're going to do on time, right? Are we burning too hot on hours on the budget of internally what we think it should be and all that kind of stuff? And then the third metric, which is the one that usually for us, like literally goes right out the window, is like, are we on the same level of satisfaction with the client, right? Are they happy with this? Are we happy with this? Let's keep going. How in the heck do you do that in your world? And how do you navigate that of how am I making sure my staff is doing well? And then also that the client is happy with the product that's coming out from the firm?
It's a great question. And you said in your world, and our world is particularly problematic for that, because often we get hired because the CEO thinks that he's going to be profiled in TechCrunch, and his tiny niche software business is somehow going to put him on the, in a giant profile on TechCrunch or Forbes or something like that. There's a few things that come out of that. Of course, he's not going to be profiled because his business is probably not that interesting to not that many people. But he doesn't even need that beyond ego, right? If you are making a niche B2B software product, putting you into a trade journal read by the 100 people who might buy is a hell of a lot better probably than me putting you in Forbes so you can show grandma about how handsome you look in the photo. So we get that a lot. So aligning interests is always a difficult thing. There is no substitute for regular communication around this and over communication. One of the great things in our business, and one of the most challenging things in our business, is that we work with a lot of foreign clients, as I've alluded to several times on this call.
Hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
That is often very difficult in terms of aligning interests. So we try very hard to over-communicate. We have goals around share of voice gains over a specific period of time. Share of voice gains are a good way for us to measure this, because it's not, hey, Jimmy, you're going to be able to show grandma that Forbes article where you're on the cover looking handsome. It eliminates those kind of subjective things from it. And it allows us to kind of put hard metrics around the goals, which are better. So when you need to align interests, I like hard metrics that aren't as subjective. I know sentiment is one of that I alluded to for measuring PR. Mm-hmm. Sentiment is a little more subjective. We have tools to do that take some of the subjectivity out of it. I don't like when a client comes to us and say, now I'm going to give you a list of 10 outlets, Jackson, or 10 influencers. Yeah. And if you put me on these, we'll, throw a party for you and, put some fucking confetti in the air or whatever. That becomes very problematic for me, because I am not running a boutique restaurant with 10 items on a menu. I need to be able to chase 100 items on the menu. And we need to be able to kind of ideate and look at who's covering what and what the narratives are in the world and craft a program from there. So I think for us, regular communication is super important. Hard metrics are super important that are not super up for debate. So numbers and percent gains of things like share of voice or sentiment analysis are good. If somebody has a few wish list items, great. We'll try and do that. If somebody says, hey, it's Black Friday, we are hoping to drive $100,000 in sales, and we want to see 50K of that from affiliate sources, we can help with that. That's a metric I could get down with. But hey, I need to be in The Verge, and I need John Smith at The Verge to be the one who writes about me. I can't help you with that, probably. I mean, if I can, great. But a fucking whole series of miracles that don't involve Santa have to happen for that to happen.
And what about internally? Just taking Daniel's question, kind of. So you talked about the outward facing expectations. What about internally with your team members?
So we have evaluations, like a lot of companies. We have things that we look for in those evaluations. One of the things that I learned this year that's been particularly interesting from a biz dev perspective, but also for evaluating account exec positions, which is in an agency a fairly popular, prominent position. We rate our executives, our AEs, on how much they grow their book of business. It's a very important thing. A lot of biz dev, for us at least, comes from existing clients. And that biz dev is a hell of a lot cheaper and easier to acquire than external clients, than going and finding a new person and, swooning them and schmoozing them and all of that. Existing clients are the bread and butter. So one of the metrics we started using this year was how much did you grow your book of business? And we had targets set on that for each AE. And that's been a really interesting one, partly because it teaches AEs in an agency situation, and I'm going a little down the marketing rabbit hole here. Sorry, guys, but it teaches
For the listener,
AEs.
AE is account exec.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. It teaches AEs about the fact that this is a business, that you need to grow that business. I think a number of founders listening to this are in a similar boat. There are, various positions like this in other companies, and you want those people thinking about, how am I going to grow my little book of business, my little fiefdom here?
One of the things
That's an interesting take. Where what you're saying is like an account executive is in charge of a book of business, like a roster of clients, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like that perspective where you're making each person that is in control of those clients or that department, so to speak. And it's kind of how I do it at my agency. I call them each. I'm like, you're the CEO of your department.
Yeah.
So your success and your failure will rest on your laurels, right?
Yeah.
So
the other thing that comes out of this that's really interesting, sorry, Peter, I'll just add this and I'll shut up. What's really interesting about this ethos and this mentality is that it makes the people who are liaising with the clients listen really well to the clients, because the clients are constantly saying, hey, we got this problem, or we got this problem, or we're thinking about this. Every time a client says that, that's an opportunity for you. Yeah. Now, if they say to me, hey, Jackson, we're thinking about paid media, we don't do paid media. We're not going to try to. But getting your AEs into this mentality of, I own this, or your whoever is the equivalent as an account executive in an agency, it makes them listen. And that makes the client relationship a hell of a lot better, because the clients want to be listened to.
Yeah.
People buy products that solve problems, services and products. They're not buying it for fun. There's a very small percentage of that. They're paying for things to make their lives better, which means remove a problem or a stumbling block. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah. I was just going to comment, Jackson, what you just said there about use the phrase, whatever your equivalent is of account executive in your company. Because what I love about what we've just been talking about there, in terms of both externally, over communicate to customers, talk about hard, objective metrics and things, remove subjectivity from expectation setting and discussion of how things are going, as well as that internal aspect. We're not just talking about PR agencies here. I really want to encourage the listener, like take what Jackson is talking about and say, how can I apply this to my business? Because he's not just talking about PR, I can assure you.
Nope, you're absolutely right.
There was no question there. It was just an observation and encouragement to the listener.
Yeah. And it's a really important part, right? My question is this, and this is kind of what I'm thinking, and this is kind of a selfish question, because I'm actually wondering it for my own agency and for my own, brand. At what point in time should a company, a founder or their company, or both, engage in PR? Like, where do they need to be? And I know everything's different in industry and all that kind of stuff, but just generally, at what point in time should they start looking to, maybe we should engage in PR? And then you can kind of, maybe if you want to expand on what that might want to look like.
Absolutely. There's a few things to think about. So first, maybe the first and most obvious, good output from the PR channel can help at any stage. That does not mean when you are a fresh out of the garage or brand new company, you should go and hire a PR firm. You should not do that. I think once there's demand, and once you've kind of gotten past the MVP stage and you can make a product that you're pretty sure the market wants and you're getting pretty good feedback on it, you can start to think at that point at brand building. So if I wanted to be really specific, there are times when a seed round level company should engage in PR, but I would generally say when you hit that A round. Maybe you're going to need to do a little PR to help you get that A round, because certainly the output of PR can help with fundraising. But A round level companies are good. When brand starts to matter, when you are going beyond, okay, we can do this and people want it, and now we have to craft or help people kind of have an idea about us in their head, because ultimately brand is in the in the brains of the others, not in the hands of the company. That's something I think a lot of people misunderstand. But once you've hit that A round level, once you can spend typically somewhere between 5 and 20K a month, and that's a big range, I know. 5 and 20K a month if you're hiring an agency. If you're doing in-house, it's going to cost more than an agency because of the salary structure. You're going to need at least 3 people. It's probably going to cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 to 450 grand a year in the United States. In most markets, it's going to vary, of course, from San Francisco to Iowa to Oklahoma to New York, of course, but those are good numbers. The 5 to 20K range is a good number for an agency in most major US markets or a center like London. If you can't spend that money for 6 to 12 months, don't do it. It's a channel that can't be turned on and off like performance marketing. So there's a certain amount of warm-up work. There's a certain amount of, we got to try this and it might fail, and we need the ability to do trial and error with the PR channel and with an agency. So if you can't commit 5 to 20K for a 6-month trial, but probably for a 12-month trial, don't bother with it. Wait until you can, because when PR programs have to scrimp, or when a founder or when a company goes to an agency and says, you know what, I got $4,000 a month and I've got 3 months and we'll see how you do. Guess what? You're lowest on that agency's totem pole. They're going to be like, okay, put the fucking 22-year-olds on that. You're not getting me. You're not getting my partners. You're getting the juniors. And that's not going to be a good experience. And I think a lot of the time, because PR has been alluded to by both you, Peter, and by you, Daniel, the industry has a bad rep. And one of the reasons the industry
Marketing
has a bad
does
rep
too.
is that this is what happens. People come and they're like, oh, I have this budget. And the agency should say, come when you have a real budget. Don't bother me with this shit. But they take it anyway, and then they get foisted onto the junior intern team.
It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, a few minutes ago, Jackson, when you were talking about navigating, I loved your use of the word hyperglycemic spikes in a business. Sort of growth spurts and stuff, and I suspect that the beginning of your agency as well, so navigating relationships outside of work, personal life, health, that kind of stuff. That's kind of starting to touch on the other pillars of the Built by Love podcast. How has that part of your sort of entrepreneurial journey been?
My journey has been a little different than most, I think, because the story I hear is a story that I think it was Dan alluded to early in the podcast, of people having to take on ridiculously long work hours, immense stress, and getting into patterns that are deeply unhealthy. I'm not quite sure why, because I do enjoy a drink. I do enjoy a night out. I do enjoy some of the things that are less healthy in life. But I've always been able to manage a balance in my life. I've always been very interested in several sports. I'm a very avid kite surfer. I live for usually 4 to 6 months a year in Aruba because it's a great place to kite surf. And I build my business around my kite surfing. Not always, but when I can. So I have had passions outside of work, and I think that's helped with balance. Some members of our team haven't quite been so lucky or been that way, and they've had to learn it. But at the end of the day, you have to create an organization where people are told and encouraged to pursue passions outside of work, and they are told and encouraged that engaging in healthy activities, including during work hours, go for the jog at 2 p.m. if you need to, because we want you to return, and we want you to return sharp, and the jog's going to help you do that. And sitting here, eating Twinkies at your desk is not going to help with that. So I guess the answer to the question is my journey's been a little different, I think, than a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm very grateful for that. Maybe there are lessons that are generalizable from my journey. I'm not entirely sure. I had very acute passions, but we've also tried, our organization, at least for those who maybe aren't coming from there, we've tried hard to encourage them without being overbearing and an idiot about it.
My takeaway from what you said there that I love is encourage activity in something you're passionate about outside of work. Find something that you're passionate about outside of work, and that's going to, because most entrepreneurs are pretty passionate about their business. So to find something outside of work that they can be equally passionate about, it almost forces that balance. It's like, well, I've been focusing on my business, for the last bit of time. It's like I'm ignoring this other thing, which I'm also really fucking passionate about. So I'm going to go and focus on that. That kind of, I love that. Really like that.
It's really important, and it's interesting. I'm glad that we got to that topic. Thanks, Peter, because I remember before I had a kid, before I was married, I was dating my now wife. I loved rock climbing, and I had the time to do it. And rock climbing is not something that you just, you drive down to the end of the street or, 10 minutes down the road. In San Diego, there's some of that, but it's not something you just easily do and then just come home for. If you're really doing it, you're going out, like at least in Southern California, you're going to Joshua Tree, you're going to Northern California, you're going to Yosemite, you're going out to Arizona, Sedona. That means you're camping. It means it's multiple days, all that kind of stuff. And when I lost that, right, because once my wife was pregnant, it's like, okay, you're not going away to Yosemite for 3 days to go climb Half Dome and climb this and climb that. And so all of a sudden I kind of felt I had no way to remove the stress from work. And so there's this vacuum, and then you end up finding something else that maybe is not the best thing. So I like that you say, hey, I'm stepping out of the office. I go down to Aruba for 3 to 4 months, which forces you into that lifestyle, as well as like removing yourself from the normal office environment. But you have 3 different sports. So if you can't do one, if you're in Montreal, you're arguably not doing kite surfing,
Not as much, that's for sure. Not as much.
So you have 2 other outlets to basically remove and wash away that stress of the thing that didn't go well, or the employee that you're wondering if you got to let him go, or the client that said some things that like really is like eating at you, keeping you up at night or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties for people, and my wife has been in the wellness world. She's worked in the wellness world. The wellness world is an absolute fucking nightmare. There's
unwell.
It's unwell deeply, right? As I believe there's a show on Netflix, Unwell. I think it's on Netflix. But it's the stuff that's put out to people makes it all seem so complicated. If you're not some homesteading, crunchy, Robert Kennedy lover, you're gonna be in trouble. It's very, very hard. And I think people have to just be somewhere along the way, for most entrepreneurs that are balanced, health has clicked. And it's clicked not in the sense that I'm going to look great and be ripped and have, a nice 6-pack or something. It's clicked in the way that this is an immensely beneficial investment to making my business, to making myself. I feel good. It's nice to sleep at night. It's nice to go have a burger and fries sometimes, but it's also nice to eat a good salad and some, a nice meal that we cooked at home. It's good to make time to get out of the office when somebody drives you crazy, a client drives you nuts or whatever. So I think somewhere along the way it clicks for people, not for everybody, but for those who it does, it's a very powerful drug. And it's amazingly beneficial to the business.
That click there that you described of recognizing that an investment, and it has come up from a couple of other of our guests, so I'm really glad that you're sort of reinforcing the message that an investment in your personal health as a CEO of a business is going to give you a return, probably a financial return in your business. It's
many X.
Many X. Really.
I believe that an investment in one's own health is it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's like Ralph Waldo Emerson
for a business.
Yeah, Ralph Waldo Emerson said that health is the first wealth.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely.
This podcast is called. Can I just ask one question? Sorry, Daniel. This podcast is called Built by Love. When you hear that phrase in the context both of your company and the PR industrial complex, of which you are a proud member, we know.
Yes.
Where does love sit for you in your world?
Love sits somewhere in the trunk tied up. And no.
With a bullet hole in it.
Although it has a gag in its mouth. It's not going well for that. No. I appreciate the question. I think that love sits. There's two things. Love for employees and love for one's own organization is very important, and I think it's very important for lots of PR firms, as Dan would know, lots of marketing firms, highly toxic places, slave ships that literally beat the shit out of young staff, make them work 12 hours for not much money. It's not a nice industry. So if you can run a nice environment, show some love to people, there are immense gains that can be reaped from that. I think too, in any service-based business, you have to love your clients, and you're not going to love every one of them. But there are some, especially when you see, oh my gosh, we had a tangible impact on his or her business. That is a powerful thing. That's a powerful drug. We have a number of clients that we genuinely love, and they're doing cool things, and we've been able to help them, and they're appreciative. It's not every single client, but love absolutely does have a role to play, despite my trunk of the car with a gag joke.
One of the I was never naturally a good CEO, right? I had to learn it. I'm still learning it, and I'm probably a pretty shitty one still, to be honest with you. There's a lot of things I don't want to do, a lot of things I'm not good at. And I'm more the visionary than the person. Don't get me in the details because I don't care about the details. So anyways, one of the things I would say that helped transform my agency, and it was out of literally decades of taking on clients that they had the budget and all that stuff, but I really didn't like what they were doing, or I really didn't like them, but I'd still take them on, was saying, you know what, if I don't actually love what you're doing, and I don't think that you're actually making the world a better place, then go find another agency. And so it's one of the key things that, because I still do the exploratory calls of, should we work together? If the key thing that I found for me is when they say, I absolutely love your name. I love Built by Love. I love that name. I'm like, that's like 90% there, that already the brand, you're aligning with the brand, and that has an emotion and a feeling. That means that you're likely doing something in your own business with your staff, and that going out to your customers and your clients, that we're going to have an alliance and that we're going to work very well together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful name, man. It's I'm
Thank
sure
you.
I'm sure people it resonates. And indeed, what's good about it, I assume, I can't know, is that, as you alluded to, I think people project it back on themselves. Like, hey, I built my thing with love too.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Right.
These are my people.
And I did that with purpose. I rebranded in 2015, and I won't get into all the details, but there's a celebrity in the space of marketing that I was working with one-on-one. And he said, why'd you come up with that name? I wouldn't hire you. And I'm like, why wouldn't you hire me? It has nothing to do with marketing. It should be accelerate your results or something. And I'm like, yeah, respectfully, I don't want to work with you. And the truth is off camera, all that guy cares about is money. That's all he cares about. He underpays his staff. His staff is overworked. They're constantly churning.
Yeah.
All he talks about is like, I'm at this revenue number. And I was like, you'd probably be a very profitable client, and you'd also be an absolute nightmare.
Right.
So,
and we don't have that much time on this earth. So why would I deal with you? It's interesting too. I mean, you hit on something that I think is an interesting theme for founders and companies that are scaling. So some of your audience, you hear a lot about, oh, we've hit this revenue, or, oh, we've hit this many employees. These are vanity metrics. They say so little. Oh my gosh, you've hit this, or even in tech fundraisers. Oh, we've raised the $50 million B round, and we still can't make a fucking dime. Like, what's going on? Who did you convince to give you this money? What kind of drugs were they on? I want those drugs. It's so interesting, these metrics that sometimes people put forth, and it's the whole cult of these metrics, these shiny, flashy metrics that people put up on LinkedIn. It's such bullshit. And I think people have to get away from this. It's at the end of the day, it's not that hard. You need to make money. You need to have people that are happy and want to stay with you and can grow with you and feel like they can learn from you. And if you have those things, you have something good. As long as you could keep evolving with the times and keep up with new developments and things like that, because nothing stays the same ever.
Amen. As we're wrapping up, I want to hit you with a couple questions and kind of like rapid fire. And it doesn't have to be anything you've worked with. It could be something you've seen out there in the world on both of these dual questions. And I'm going to give them both to you now.
Sure.
The first is, where have you seen an example, like a great example of an absolute PR disaster? Like, what were you thinking? What, as in the brand, like, what were you all thinking when you had this roll out, and it could be something, again, that you've either directly worked with or you've just seen unfold. And then conversely, what is an incredibly well executed campaign? And succinctly, what are the key markers that you think that made those successful or a failure?
Sure. In terms of failures, I think I would have to cite, I believe it is Toyota. It's a tire company. The tires were exploding on Ford vehicles. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe it's not. I've forgotten. Let me use another example. BP. I'll use BP in the Gulf. BP was an absolute nightmare when that well blew in the Gulf. And why was it a nightmare from a PR perspective? It was a nightmare because the communication took so long. The communication was scattered. It was not coherent. And the updates were not very frequent. So they basically broke every rule of crisis comms across the board, to say nothing of, whatever they did to the environment and everything else. I'm not trying to belittle those things. I'm just saying, from a PR perspective, the way BP handled the oil spill in the Gulf was a disaster. I think, and I'll give you another, it's less a PR campaign, but it's an interesting problem that's going on up here in Canada right now. Up here in Canada, we have a government that's been in power for about, I think it's 10 years now. Maybe it's only 8 years. But the government is doing what many governments do when they're losing power. They're trying to buy votes. They're trying to basically give taxpayers checks to go do whatever they want with and everything. And I think it's just an interesting, these are not entirely stupid people. It's not the party that I support, but they're not stupid people, and they're just going to tactics that are so proven to be played out, so proven to be transparently known as bullshit. And it's amazing what desperation can produce, even when you have relatively intelligent people who haven't made mistakes like this before. So those are two examples: the current Liberal government in Canada and BP oil spill in the Gulf.
And on the flip side,
I remember the BP oil spill. I remember they used to have a live feed, and you could just watch the thing just spewing oil.
Spewing. It was freaking awful, man.
And then on the flip side of it,
there's a couple of, it's PR. I think it's very ingenious. It's PR that meshes with many other marketing channels. I think that Liquid Death in the United States has done a wonderful job of generating earned media through some of its marketing initiatives and tactics. Also, and it's not, there will be people who listen to this podcast of all political stripes, I'll say, but I think the recent victory of Donald Trump in the United States election was a masterful PR campaign. Full truth, it's not who I would have voted for, but what they did, what they knew about media was very, very interesting. They used traditional media very, very slightly. A lot of focus was on newer forms of media. Obviously, everybody knows about that Joe Rogan interview right before the election. They had so much savvy in terms of how to connect with their people. Whether you are their people or you aren't, doesn't matter. They were really, really good about understanding this is where our audience is and going there and doing that. And some of that involved bucking conventional wisdom. Like, we don't need to go and talk to the New York Times for hours on end, or, do myriad interviews with 60 Minutes or whatever it was. We can go to Rogan. It's going to be this kind of environment where our guy is better than in a formal, maybe New York Times environment where a Times reporter is going to get aggressive. So for me, there was a lot to learn, even if you're not of that political stripe, from that campaign.
I still read an interesting post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I think it probably would have been just after the election result, on the number of hours of long form podcasts that Donald Trump was on as opposed to Kamala Harris, and it was just like an order of 10 times difference. So it's interesting that you alluded to Donald Trump's interview with Joe Rogan. What are your thoughts on the sort of podcasting landscape generally, both from a business and a PR perspective?
Two things in particular. I think that podcasts are absolutely on the rise as a category in terms of influence. I think that for certain types of people, the environment of a podcast, the longer form thing, often the more casual nature, works very well. The trouble with podcasts is that there are so many podcasts and so few have such a disproportionate influence. This is why Harris was on Call Me Daddy, and this is why Trump was on Rogan, because those are obviously particularly influential podcasts. But it is a realm where if you look at the number of podcasts regularly producing content in the US versus the number who have the lion's share of listenership, it's crazy. It's completely disproportionate. It is a tiny percentage of rich who get richer. So big on podcasts. I think they're a really important part of the new media environment where traditional media in some spheres is waning in terms of its influence. But you got to be on the ones that matter. Now, you don't need to be on Joe Rogan if you're promoting some sort of, weird farm equipment. You need to be on the one the guys who buy the farm equipment listen to. And I couldn't tell you what that is. But they're important, but you got to be really good at targeting. You got to be really good at picking where you go as a company, as a CEO, as a PR firm with clients, who you're targeting.
And what about businesses having their own podcast?
I think it can be interesting. Sometimes, as you both know, when businesses create content and everybody's always on about owned media is the mode, owned media is the insurance. I get it. The problem with owned media is it's often cooked by a lot of cooks and shit is watered down and risk averse. And so great. If you want to do a podcast, you should do a podcast, but cool podcasts are the ones that don't sound vanilla and like a legal department produced them.
Mm-hmm. Has to be curated. It really has to be curated.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to talk about your company real quick as we're wrapping up, who you guys serve, how people can find you, but speaking to where you're talking about, the campaign, the presidential campaign in the United States where, Trump was going on non-traditional outlets. It's interesting because you mentioned Kamala Harris and Joe Rogan invited her on, but her team said, we're going to do it our way, not your way. You have to come to us. We're going to edit and we're going to have the chance of changing the whole structure. So then we control what the product is that goes out. And Joe Rogan said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about Joe Rogan, of course he did. Yeah. Like, it's Joe Rogan. Of course he's going to say, fuck you.
If you're her media team sitting back, what a misstep in my opinion of
huge misstep.
You had the opportunity to go on the same platform that Trump went on. It's the largest podcast at the time in the world in viewership. And you really could have appealed to the other side, but for whatever reasons, I have my own opinions of like how well she speaks or whatever, her coherency, but she didn't do it. And I think ultimately, who the next president is, whether you love the person or hate the person, I think that non-traditional outlet of media and that long form content definitely had a major role in that.
100%.
As we wrap up. So proper propaganda, you guys are based out of Canada. You said you serve clients globally. So who do you serve? Who should come to you? Like whether there's a revenue point or there's an inflection point or what. So if you can give our listener a little bit of information and then how they can find you.
Absolutely. So as you said, Proper Propaganda, we are a tech PR agency, primarily serving consumer tech. We can do some B2B stuff as well. Main criteria is businesses that want to build their brand and profile in the United States. So sometimes those are native to American companies. Often they are companies from foreign jurisdictions that are coming to the US and want to expand there. In terms of stage, at least probably an A round, at least the ability to pay that 5K to 20K USD per month. We have a very innovative billing model that's primarily performance based. So I won't get into that here, but know that the 5 to 20K is arranged for a reason. And how do they get in touch? Properpropaganda.net. I am on LinkedIn as Jackson Wightman, the way you see my name here on this podcast. And we are going to CES. I don't know if this will be released before CES. Probably it won't. But I'm going to be at CES in January in Las Vegas, as we are every year, trying not to die, trying to get out of Vegas alive, because that is an endeavor every year.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's I take like 42 shots before I go.
Right.
It's definitely a venture. But properpropaganda.net, as I say, consumer tech with a focus on expanding brand and presence in the United States.
Amazing. Any last words? Any last morsel of advice for someone who, excuse me, for our listener who maybe is not ready for you? Maybe is there something they could do today or something that they should invest in the year to get them ready to be able to hire a firm like yours?
First thing you can do is absolutely, you can talk to me, and I promise I will not try to sell you if you do not have the budget or you are not prepared to hire me, because there are enough people around the world who have voodoo dolls of me that they stick pins in, and I don't need any more of this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to start by listening. All good marketing, all good PR, certainly, I believe, is rooted in listening and then crafting from there. If you don't listen, you will miss problems that people have. You will miss opportunities that your business can serve. So there's a myriad of free listening tools available on the internet. Set them up, listen, gather intelligence, and from there we can talk about producing content, doing PR, doing ads, doing whatever else. But start by listening.
You mentioned tools there. Can you just give us the name of a couple just so we can guide the listener about what they're looking for?
Everything from kind of critical mention, muck rack, as simple as a Google alert, okay. If that's the budget level you're at, anything around there. But those are a couple of good options: critical mention, muck rack, and Google alerts for starters.
Great advice. Thanks, Jackson.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as we're wrapping up, because I for years and years and years had a Google alert set. So for the listeners, what's a Google alert? You can create keywords like search terms where something mentions something. It could be your name. It could be marketing in your city, whatever you set. And anytime that basically something new gets published, Google is going to alert you about it. So did I do a good job of explaining Google Alerts at the most basic level?
Wonderful job.
Thanks, boss. Yeah. Awesome. Jackson, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com/podcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.